on Jesus, all things are possible. I can mount on wings like eagles and soar. When I call on Jesus, mountains are gonna fall. 'Cause he'll move heaven and earth to come rescue me when I call.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to It Is Possible Tuesdays with Sanjo. It is 2025, and I am so happy that I have someone that I've known for years who is on my program today to start off 2025. It's going to be a blast, it's going to be inspirational, it's going to be informative. You are going to be blessed. But as usual, let us start off with our favorite saying. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for prosperity and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
My special guest today, I call her, and I know she's no longer that, but I still see her as my little mango tree. And we're going to tell you about that later on. But I'm going to ask her to introduce herself to you, my little mango tree.
Hi everyone. I'm Cheryl Thomas Scott. I am her mango tree because she knows me originally as Cheryl Ann Thomas. And I have known Auntie Sonia my whole life, really. So it's good to be here. I am from Jamaica. I am a communication specialist by profession. And currently a digital communications consultant. So I freelance. And I am also a social entrepreneur, as it's called. I run a social enterprise called Peruse Limited. So that's me.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Lots to unpick. You're in for a treat, everyone. But let's start off. She's from Jamaica. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where were you born? Do you have siblings? Which school did you go to? Things like that.
Sure. So I said I'm Jamaican, born, raised Jamaican. I was born in Kingston, well, St. Andrew to be specific. Grew up, however, in Portmore, St. Catherine. Lived there pretty much my whole life, apart from when I went to
Mm.
university. I went to Wolmer's Trust High School for Girls. Yes, yes, I'm a
Aggie.
Wolmerian. I get quite a guess. Yes, maroon and gold through my blood, of course. And then from there, I went to NCU. So I went to Northern Caribbean University. I did my first degree there. In mass communications with a minor in Spanish. I cannot tell you much in Spanish, even though I studied it. Um, I also, I guess, my first time living from home, because even though I went to NCU and I spent 3.5 years there, I didn't really live on campus or away from home. I was with daddy during the week, and then on the weekends, I was back in Portmore. So I didn't really live away from home per se. But after that, after doing that, I graduated and I went to grad school in the States. I went to Emerson College and did my master's there. And that was my first time living away from family and just being on my own, taking care of myself. And so I studied in Boston, USA, and came back home because I am an island girl through and through. I'm not going to tell you I would never migrate, but the chances are so low because I really love being home. I love being able to just I love the sun. Like I'm an actual plant. Like I need to go outside and get the sun and feel it in my bones, that sort of thing. So yeah, I came back home and I have been home from 2013. So a little over 10 years in my career in various capacities. So that's a bit about me. I would add one thing though before I go, because I don't think I can tell you about myself without mentioning. I am married for almost 10 years. This year, this April will be 10 years. I'm married to Dwayne Scott. He is a minister of religion. He's a pastor, and we have been serving together in pastoral ministry for almost 10 years, as I said, and I have two kids. I have two boys. I am shocked that I even can say that. I am a mom of two boys. I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, almost two, actually. He's two in a few days. So, yeah.
Oh, lovely. And whenever I see that, I say, look at my little mango tree bearing fruit. But
Exactly, exactly.
I need to share the mango tree story with everyone. And I want you to tell us why it is that you are known as the little mango tree.
Yeah, so firstly, I don't know why I'm doing this interview and I don't have the actual story. I have the actual story, like I have the actual printout. I've always kept it as my souvenir. So, growing up, I always wanted to be an author, and I still do want to be an author, so I'm gonna throw that one out there.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a child, I used to write a lot, and our church used to have a magazine. So we both went to Portmore Seventh-day Adventist Church. That was my home church, and there was a magazine. I forgot the name of the magazine, Auntie Sonia, to be
So,
honest, but I would write to the submit my story to the magazine, and there was a story that I submitted called Myself as a Mango Tree, and I gave the whole context of being a mango tree and the life of a mango tree, and so that story is really how Auntie Sonia got to calling me a mango tree, because I was constantly after that, and I think I was 8 when I did that, and that stuck with me
yes,
to this
yes,
point. And I must say, I truly appreciated that opportunity, just being able to write for something that
yes.
seemingly would have been insignificant, but it has played such a huge role in my life, because even though I'm not a author
All
or
the
writer in that sense, I definitely pursued a career that allowed me to do that. So for sure, I appreciate
lovely.
it.
I can. The magazine was a baby of mine, which came through our communication department. It was called Resound.
That was the
Now
name.
defunct, but
Yes.
it's a lovely venture, and I'm happy that I had it because wonderful things came out of it. You spoke of your love for writing. You've gone into a career with communication and things like that. Um, Tell me a little bit about studying abroad. You did your first degree in mass comm and Spanish, then you went to the States. Why the States? Why not stay? Why not go to UWI? Why not Canada? Why not the UK?
So it wasn't even specifically the country, but more so the program. So for me, I did my master's in global marketing communications and advertising. And for me, I have always had, so just as how I've always had an interest in writing, I've always had an interest in traveling and
Mhm.
just like a very global world view, so to speak. And so I wanted to do something that allowed me to work with major brands or organizations that had global reach. And so when I was looking for the program, I couldn't find a similar program here in the region, here in Jamaica for sure. And in looking, I found something, a program that was short. I didn't want something that was too long. And it was just there available, ready. When I searched, it was there, and I found, I think at the time it was two other or three other Jamaicans in the very same media communication space that had studied that very same program, including what's her name? I believe it's Marcia Forbes. So she's the person behind Phase 3 Productions. And
Yes.
I thought, okay, we have a few Jamaicans that have done this program over the years. And at the time, like persons had done it in the 80s, in the 90s, and then I was coming to do it in 2000. So I figured, okay, it definitely had
Mhm.
some legs behind it and some legacy. And so that's kind of why I chose the program. But studying there, like it really gave me just a different kind of perspective when it came on to how can I take the general cultural understanding that I have when it comes on to media and communications, and then how I could apply that to larger brands that had influence beyond just in one,
Um,
you know,
Agreement.
geolocation, but
Mhm.
actually globally, and how do you for want of a bet, I guess a better word, it's not the best word, but how do you manipulate, tell the right
Yes.
story for the various locations without losing the
Same.
general essence of what that brand or that
Was
company stood for? And I really wanted to be a part because in my mind, doing marketing and communications is all about telling the story of what a brand, organization, company stands for, right? And so I saw that, and it had a lot of recognition based on the program. I think it was ranked in the top five actually for the US, and I think it's top 10 globally. So it was a really good program, had a lot of like really strong influencers and experts in the space having done the program. And so I chose it and I absolutely appreciated the program. Hated the New England weather though. I knew that I was not gonna stay like the amount of persons that were like, sure, you're not gonna stay. Find out. Even after I found my internship, I was like, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm coming back to my yard. We're not staying. We're not staying. I hated the cold. I hated just how bleak it could be. I definitely appreciated though being there because it gave me perspective that I definitely didn't get here, and it also strengthened my faith a lot. That's something a lot of my testimonies that I do share are from that season, that era of my life. um I was able to recognize how much the Adventist faith particularly was just how I could find that community even in a different country, because I was able to find a church that became my church. I participated just as if I was home. And how that really helped to keep me grounded because of course, when you're away, I mean, I was on my own. I was paying my rent, I was paying my bills, I was doing my own thing, taking care of myself. I could go anyway, right? But I definitely was able to find my community, even in the school space, even though it was very secular, and it's like recognized that one of the most secular spaces, like schools in New England. So that was it. But at the same time, I was able to still have my grounding and find the people that I could truly connect with. And even to this day, um, it's been what, over 11 years since graduating from the program. I've still been in a space where I can connect with these individuals, we can reach out, we can query job opportunities all across the globe because we were all from across the globe. I think we had like, it was like maybe 30 something of us. And of that, only 10 were from the US. So we were all from across the globe. And yeah, we've been able to maintain that relationship. So
lovely. So I'm hearing authenticity. I'm hearing community. I'm hearing there's no place like home. I'm
definitely.
hearing faith. And I want to touch on the faith, but before that, I want to find out, you've spoken about your faith. Have you always been an Adventist? What was your life like as an Adventist child if you were always an Adventist?
Oh yeah, so I'm born and raised Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up in Portmore. Portmore as my church, I did everything. So I did Pathfinder, Adventure, the choir. sing with the mass choir. I saw my church go from being unfinished to finished to being like I definitely went through all of it, and I as an adult now I definitely appreciate the life I had. I actually didn't know how privileged I was until becoming an adult. And what I mean by that is I got what I would consider a very comprehensive Adventist foundation. So I definitely my family, they're Adventist, my parents. My dad is like what you'd call second generation Adventist. My mother was really one of the first Adventists in her family. So she definitely didn't have all of that full support from a family standpoint. And it's still sort of that way. She have a few relatives that are Adventists now, but originally that was not the case. But I was able to get the complete experience of almost my whole life. And what I mean by that is, yes, I went to school, but Seventh-day Adventism really shaped my existence as a child. So on the weekends, yes, there's church, but then there's choir practice, and then there's Pathfinder on the weekend, and then there's summer camps, and there are Christmas camps, and then there are Easter camps, and then we're talking about going to swimming with church, and then there's church trips and all of that. And it really, and not even just that, something I was thinking about on the business side for me, I've been hosting these workshops, and I remembered that the very same venue, I didn't realize until this year or a few weeks ago actually, that the very same venue that I host one of the workshops is where our church hosted workshops on the summer. I did not like it was clearly in my subconscious that I didn't even recognize that it's this very same they would host these youth development workshops. And exactly. And it really helped to shape so much of my outlook on life that I like it's now I'm recognizing that wait, that's why that's the reason I do what I do, and I don't even recognize that that is exactly the reason, because my church gave me that sort of grounding that is just to me now I'm recognizing it's definitely a privilege, because not many Adventist churches are like that, but I really got the opportunity to have every aspect, a holistic view of my childhood for every aspect: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, every bit was shaped by my Adventist grounding, and I'm so grateful, so grateful. I try my best to impart it as much to my sons. Like my sons learn the children's choir songs, even though they don't sing on no children's choir, because mommy is gonna sing those songs same way, and that's really something that I truly appreciate, even to this day for sure.
Yes. It's I'm happy you've used the word privilege, because quite often you speak to young people now and they don't recognize it as a privilege. They don't recognize it as a solid foundation. They often see it as being restrictive. And so it's good to hear that looking back on your life now as an adult, you can say, wow, I was privileged, and that it laid the foundation for how I look on life and how I actually present myself in the public
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
And having had that, you said that a lot of your testimonies relate to when you were in Boston doing your master's. Tell us a little bit about that. What were some of your experiences that caused your faith to be strengthened?
Well, yeah, so I can start off by before even getting there. Um, so when I got accepted for grad school, it at the time it was either $52,000 for the program or 54 US dollars. So it's a lot of money. The equivalent at the time, based on our exchange rate in Jamaica, that was almost 4 million Jamaican dollars. I didn't have student loan before. And so trying to secure a loan was, however, not easy, because you typically get loans for programs in Jamaica, not the other way around. And so that was already a very difficult process in, am I gonna do this program? I don't have no money. My parents definitely didn't have any money. I remember my parents, when we had a discussion, they were considering remortgaging the house to see if we could get money. So really did not have the money. And based on like even just to get the student visa, like we needed to show that there was money readily available. And I remember just getting like funding, like persons making contributions where we never expected it. And even though it wasn't large sums, all of them were just in time for us to either secure the visa, for example, so it could all go into one account and persons could see that, okay, there are some available funds, enough just to pay for this part of the term or another semester, you know. Those were definitely experiences for me. I remember as well, not knowing where I was gonna live. I knew I could not afford dorm. That was just out of the question. I didn't have any family because this is Boston. It's not like a New York or a Miami. No family. And I remember a friend of mine. She said, Cheryl, I have a sister who lives in Boston, but it's like multiple kids and the space is tight. But she has indicated that she's okay with you coming. But this somebody, I don't know. I don't know this person. And I remember mommy she had a work trip that took her to Europe, not even to the US. And she said when she's coming back, she's gonna stop in Boston, and she stopped in Boston and she stayed a few days as a complete stranger with a complete stranger to see if maybe, just maybe, this is somewhere that you can go. And she did that for me. She checked out the person's house pretty much, and I ended up going and staying with her for, I think it was the first 4 weeks. But after 4 weeks, without her saying it to me, she was going around it, but it was like, honestly, technically, you can't stay because the space is tight. It's like a 2 bedroom, it's 2 kids, it's 4 kids, it's me. It's just not conducive. And I'm a stranger, and I get it.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know how this is gonna work. Like, I'm gonna be homeless. And I can't tell my parents that I'm gonna be homeless. Like, I can't say anything. And I remember, so this would have been like, so I got there late August, September. This was now October, and we're going into the colder, right? The colder period, and I don't know where I'm going to live. And I went to church. This was my first Sabbath at this particular church. First, I say I'm going visiting, I jump on the train, I go. And when I go, I meet this older lady. And she said to me, I think I was sitting like in the bench behind her. And at their church, when they were welcoming visitors, they asked for persons to stand, and I stood. And in speaking, she heard my accent. So she was like, "Oh, you're from home, yeah, the blah blah blah. You know how it goes." And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, when I was leaving church, she said, "How are you reaching home?" And I said to her, I'm gonna take the train. And she said, all right, I'll ask my husband and he'll carry you home. We'll drop you home.
Yes,
So
yes,
they
yes.
said, all right. So I jump in the car. They actually lived the other way, and they took me to where I was going, to the community where I was staying. And on our way there, we're just talking. Complete stranger, and I just meet this lady, and her husband. Although they were like retired, they're talking with them. And I don't know, I just felt, and I shared with them, I actually might need to be looking for a place. Do you know of any places available for rent? I would definitely be open and whatever. And she said, I don't know if it's available for rent, but my daughter, she has, like she would say, she has 2 rooms at her apartment. And I think I can ask her and you can stay there. So I was like, stay there or pay the rent. She said, no, man, you got to pay rent, but we're going to talk to her. So I'm like, firstly, the person does not have somewhere open for rent. She has not spoken to her daughter, nothing. And she said, take the number. And she called me. She took my number. I took her number. And she called me maybe like later that night. And she said, yes, you can come and start renting there. But what I'm going to ask you to do is try and see if you can just come and see the space. And when I came there, so firstly, there was the room, but the room did not have any furniture in it. So this complete stranger who does not know me, who is her daughter, she said, you can take my bed. You can take my bed for the next couple of days until I furnish in here, and then you can start paying me rent. She didn't know me. She did not know me. I did not know her. And like to this day, so I ended up, fast forward, ended up going there, moving in, renting the space, having a room. They furnished the room for me with everything. I didn't have winter clothes. They got it for me, all of those things. And I'm like, that for me was early in the period, but just at one of the testimonies. And I have so many like different examples of just testimonies after testimonies of just how God showed up. Because me and that lady were good. You would swear many people. To be exact, she told most people that this is my niece. That's what she said. Oh no, this is my niece. My niece is staying here. Of course, it's my niece. What's in it? Nobody would know that I'm not her niece. She took so much care of me. And I mean, I remember there were days when I just didn't have enough money. Like I didn't have enough money to maybe get groceries. And it's like she undercuts the whole heap of pride, so I'm not telling her so less. And she not saying anything to me. All she would say is, Cheryl, I took up those stuff at the supermarket. You're good? No, she's like, those are for you or whatever. Or I would come home and many times I come in, I tell people I used to know how to make egg and noodles really well. Cause that was I don't know, was so malnutrition that I'm sure. The mercies of God. And I make pure different egg version, curry egg, all manner of things because that's all I can afford most days. And like when she recognized that I've gone like all 2 days and it's that she's me eating in the kitchen, she was like, no, I made some this you can eat. I made some, look in the microwave. I left something in the oven for you. There's a plate. And I'm like, God, you showed up. Another example, I have to share this one. I had a class on Friday nights. I remember. And I said, God, this was like, so not the first, this was like maybe the second semester or third. And I had this class and I'm like, God, I'm not. And I remember more than one person saying to me, Adventist, they're like, Cheryl, God will understand. And I said, it's not in a case of God understanding. I feel convicted that I shouldn't. That's a conviction. That's even beyond him as me see it. I just feel convicted that that is something I'm not going to do. And I reached out to the president, not the president. I think I reached out to my advisor and I said, if you feel so strongly about it, you can write pretty much appeal to not have the class. I don't think the semester had started as yet, to not have the class on that time and try and see if you can do another course. Now, the challenge is this class came once a year, once for the whole school year. So I'm like, Lord, how is this gonna work? And there was a program similar but not the same. So my program was more global focused. There was a integrated marketing communications program that existed. There was a similar course but not the same. Completely different, but there were similarities. And it was in this other program and it took place on another day of the week. And I appealed and it had to be voted by the president actually. And they allowed for me to do that course. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I am not gonna get as much information. And I did. I definitely did. I passed it, did well. And that happened actually 3 times because when we had our capstone, my final presentation, I remember, was on a Saturday. And somehow I convinced my group to present without me. and I still got full marks. I remember just putting in so much work, like overtime, to ensure that, because it was a group assignment, that at no point in time they felt as though I never did anything.
Anything,
And
yeah.
I did all of that, and I got an A for that course. And I was like, God, and it happened multiple times, just me taking a stand for God and God showing up for me. And over and over and over it happened while I was there. And I definitely left. When I came back home, I didn't have a job lined up. But I was like, if God allowed me to navigate all of that, there is no way it will not work out. And even though when I just came back home, I had a number of just difficult experiences, from one job, having the job, to losing that job, to having another job. I had one job, I lost it. Then I had another job, not that they fired me, but they were just like, yeah, this. And I said, all right. And the second one, the company made everybody redundant. And I was without a job for a while. And I remember, I'm like, I have the loan, because there were loans we still ended up taking. And I'm like, I have loan to pay off. Where I'm gonna find, how we're gonna do. And I remember doing, at the time, Heart had just come out with this program where they paid a stipend to people who had degrees to do certain jobs. So a little bit of money. And I did that job for 2 months. And then I ended up, after being home for a full year, that was my first time, after being through several jobs, that was my first time actually having a full time. And that job, I actually worked with the Digital Group, and I grew so much out of that, got promoted so much times after that. And it was ideal because it was a regional role. So working with the team all across the region. And I was like, God, I learned to wait on him, is what I'll tell you. I learned to wait on him, and he showed up big time for me. And has, of course, throughout the years since then. But that laid a huge foundation in my professional life for sure.
Wow. I'm just sitting down here looking at it. Malika mango tree gone all the way to Foreign in coal. Don't know where she's going to live. And look at how God showed up. Indeed, it is a thing of God doing that which is impossible for man.
Mm-hmm.
And as you kept saying, he showed up for you. You stood up for him, he showed up for you. What advice would you give to young people, young Black, Afro-Caribbean, African American, African young ladies who are going out into the world, who have a Christian outlook? What would your advice be to them?
I would, based on my own experience, I would say you are more valuable than you actually think. Um, when you have a Christian perspective, when Jesus is the reason you do what you do, it impacts you in more ways than you could possibly think. And so you end up finding yourself as being more valuable than you actually think. Because earlier in my career, I used to, you'd call it, and even, I'm not going to lie to you, even there are days now that I do struggle with it, where it's like, they're gonna constantly be sacrificing for me, right? I'm not the one showing up on the Saturday. I'm not gonna stay late Friday night. I'm not gonna be able to hang out and have drinks with them or whatever. And so I'm not as valuable. But that's actually a lie. It's a lie, because there are certain character traits and skill sets that you bring to the table that many just don't. If they, especially as a Seventh-day Adventist, that we bring, and a few of them I'll share. One is integrity. And just they have a general understanding that you have a certain level of integrity that just, I mean, as long as you are practicing it, of course, but it's evident. And I've seen it time and time again for myself in the various organizations that I have worked. And I have been blessed to work at organizations, every single role I have had, and I can say it without a shadow of a doubt, except one. And it was still a big role, big. They were all either regional or global organizations. And when I worked with OPM here in Jamaica, it was at a very national level. So either way, you find yourself in positions of, I would say, almost like your Joseph kind of roles. You end up in very high positions because of that integrity. So that's one. I would say two as well. They see you as somebody that is just transparent. And I guess it ties back to the integrity. So they know what they're getting. So they know if they pick you, they're picking this. And you're what you are, and it's clear. And as long as you keep consistently to that, then that transparency thing is there. A third thing I would say is, especially if you participated in church, it's the public speaking element, and it goes a long way. No, I'm so serious. I am, to a large extent, I think I'm an ambivert. So I get drained after being publicly in a certain space and just want to take a back seat. But I can also just go in a public space and chat, 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 right, without feeling nervous, or even if the nerves were there at the beginning, it typically goes because of just from your licky, you stand up and say a memory verse in front of the whole church, and you need to know how to speak and to say certain things. And so it really does help. So I think to a young woman, I would say if you desire to keep your faith in public, those are some of the skill sets that you bring to the table that many you would think others carry, but the fact is, no. Many times they don't. And so you have that and you're able. And also, one thing I recognized as well for me is that of even with a difficult boss or the difficult supervisor, being able to maneuver and just be able to work alongside them. It doesn't mean that our relationship is perfect, but it typically means that there is no malice, no gossip, no cuss out, no whatever. We're able to operate amicably and just be in a space where, we respect each other, even if we're not, best buds or whatever. And I do believe that that is Christianity coming out in that regard. And I experienced that multiple times to know that definitely it's the Christian beliefs that I've had that come out in those types of situations.
Yeah, lovely. I'm listening to you, the integrity, the transparency, the public speaking, because of course 13th Sabbath you have to get up there and you have to say your 13th Sabbath verse, and when you have to do your Pathfinder investiture and all of these things,
Everything, all of it,
yeah,
right.
you're from a very early age, you're given that platform to develop your poise and your communication skills. And as you say, not many people recognize that those things are actual traits that you need for adult life. And we get it every day. We
Yes.
have to do it. And sometimes we're like, I don't want to go up there and speak, but and I don't even know that we even think those things because
No, we
you
don't.
are conditioned to think like it was all, here's an opportunity, you're taking it. But you said something, and I don't know if many people know what it is. An ambivert. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, so an ambivert typically is considered to be somebody who is a bit in between an extrovert and an introvert. So this is somebody who, for on a general sense, they seem to be a full extrovert, right? They seem to be outgoing, outspoken, etc. But at the same time, for many ambiverts, they have almost like this withdrawal that comes with being an introvert. So
Yeah.
they're now in a position where they typically just, it's like the battery, after it drains, it need to recharge. And so I'm definitely that, where it's like I'm okay for like a period, but then after a few minutes or even hours, and I'm just like, okay, enough. Like I need to recharge. And so that's something over time I've learned about myself. I didn't know that originally. And at one point I thought, am I bipolar? Because it's like 1 minute you're this, but then I recognize it was just a personality trait of mine that I just needed to kind of recharge myself, spend a lot of time. And so I do journal a lot. I do like to be alone a lot as well. I do, well, my mother always talked about this when I was a child. I do daydream a lot. Like I need my own time to be alone. And once I am good and have gotten enough of that, I am ready to just be out there and interacting and engaging and meeting new people and chatting. But just know it's very temporary. It's very temporary.
So it's fascinating because many people might have looked on you and said, "Oh, but she's moody because she doesn't always want to be around people." But now that the word ambivert has come into the vocabulary, people are becoming more aware and more understanding of what's
Yes,
happening with
yes.
people who are usually very outgoing and so forth. Now, it's interesting that you have now come to understand that you're an ambivert. How do you tie that into the fact that you are in ministry with your husband, who has to be a very outgoing people person all the time? How have you made the concession or the big step? Or have
So that one, that one's hard. I'm not even gonna pretend it is very hard for me to navigate that with him. What I will say is I am more than anything, I'm more so grateful for him being my partner because he really understands. So he knows when like I've checked out and he will either say, no man, you can go to the car, or no, you don't need to come. And it's not even like I don't want your attitude or not. It's like literally like, all right, I get it. You can manage to come. And so I don't go everywhere with the doing. And he understands that. And he is quick to share it with anybody, like, no man, she just couldn't make it. He's not gonna give a reason, but
yeah,
he's just
yeah.
like, no, she couldn't make it this time. And I think that is what is helpful, that he understands, because in the earlier stages of our marriage, I got married young. Like I can say that straight up. I was 24 when I got married. So definitely still trying to understand a lot about myself. And I tried to be that extrovert, that outgoing everywhere with him, talk to everybody. And it was draining, like emotionally draining. Um, and like I used to feel sad, and like feel sad and just like a heaviness. And then I recognized it's because I was not managing my own personality traits and trying to better understand myself. And after getting that understanding, which yes, to an extent took time, but it also required me talking to other persons to recognize that it wasn't unique to me. Um, it was after doing that that I had a better grasp. And so now I am in a better position to also engage with him, but then also know that, yeah, sometimes we're not going to engage, or we go and we sit in the car and I don't feel bad, or I go and I just focus on my kids and it's just my kids, and
Yeah,
I maybe do a very distant hi and then
yeah.
hurry back to the car if I recognize that I'm just not at peak, so to speak. And it's not because I want to position myself as being perfect, because that's definitely not the case, and I try to be my authentic self as much as possible, but it's also because not every person you come in contact with is at that level of maturity, and so not everybody will recognize what is happening. Some persons might take it personal, like, no, she thinks she's better than me, blah blah blah, you know. So because of the experience and then just better understanding of who I am, um, I stay away and allow myself to recharge and just be a better version, not better version, but the more extroverted version of myself when I am in that position. And if I do recognize, because I am now able to see the signs of when I'm just drained, I literally feel tired to then recharge. And then also I think better understanding the season that I'm in as well. So the season of being a parent. Yes, I'm his wife, but I'm also a parent to two boys, and like understanding that in this part of ministry, there are big, if not bigger, parts of my ministry that may be at times pastoral ministry, like the ministry to them takes precedence. And if it is that I'm on 25, the 25% I might just have to give to just them and not, to a wider group. So, yeah.
That's powerful because I, and it's interesting, just Sabbath, Friday, yeah, Kencott had an interesting Vesper service where they were looking at the pressures of the pastor's children, the pressure
Mm.
that they feel. Because quite often when we see the pastor and his wife and his children, we're thinking, oh, they are called to ministry. They must minister. And then we look and say, why are the children misbehaving? And without recognizing that the children were not called to ministry, and the
Oh
wives are not
no,
necessarily called to ministry, but they
cause.
have to because that's the expectations, and it does take its toll. So it's a very powerful statement where you have recognized that, listen, I have to think about the little church that I have at home, the little community I have at home, and the fact that I need to pour into them so that
That's it.
they can pour into others without
Mm-hmm.
there being a deficit. And
Yeah,
it's something that I would love for the church at large to realize about
yeah,
pastoral families,
yeah,
so that we are a little bit more caring and a
yeah.
little bit more thoughtful
Give us a
when
bit more grace. Yes,
yes,
agreed,
yes, I do
agreed.
think it is so important, and I'm so happy that you have voiced it as a young shepherdess, you know.
Yes.
Um, Now you made an important statement as well that you spoke to others, and we're not a very we're very chatty, but we're not very open about
Oh,
certain
yes.
things. So that must
Yeah.
have been a very big step for you to take, where you went to somebody and you spoke to them. Um, were you at a crisis, or were you recognizing, I don't want it to get to crisis, I need to do something?
Yeah, so I wasn't at a crisis level per se, but definitely recognizing that I was heading there. And to the point, me journaling, that is how I recognized I was getting there, because I do put down on paper how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking. Um, After putting it there, I then reached out to, interestingly, a number of other shepherdesses,
Repetitions.
younger shepherdesses at that, and kind of shared and recognized I wasn't alone. Yes, there were some that are more extroverted and it did not matter,
Yeah, yeah.
either near, but there were others that they definitely were experiencing what I was experiencing, and they had found a solution that worked. That was, surely don't put out all or 100 constantly, PP cluck cluck, as Jamaicans would
Yeah,
be saying,
yeah.
behind his spouse. But you'd also need to be pouring back into yourself. And I think
Actually,
also what that meant as well is, though they were younger shepherdesses, not younger in age, but more
yes.
so younger as in younger in
Miss
ministry with their
Ministry.
spouse. And they, however, had a bit more maturity in being an adult and understanding
Mm,
what not to do or what to do. And so they had a general understanding beyond just being the pastor's wife, but just as an individual. And I think that is what helped. So being able to share and have Having them as like a confidential space that I could share was
Yes.
definitely helpful. And we actually have a WhatsApp group with each other. Separate from even other pastoral wise, but this is just our group that has clicked and been able to like just share, get the advice, recognize that you're not alone with certain perspectives, navigating things, navigating being a new mother, navigating changing jobs when it
Mm.
comes on to navigating if you have to move, like navigating all of that because it is a lot. It is a lot. And I'm so sorry I didn't know about this program because I would have definitely watched in to the program. Hopefully it's on maybe
It's on
to
YouTube.
go and
Yes.
just check out. All right. I'll definitely check it out because um there's definitely the various expectations regarding being a spouse or a shepherdess, a pastor's wife, pastor's spouse in ministry, and just navigating that. That is a whole other thing outside of all of the nuances that you have to navigate
Navigate.
of just
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a bit, but I have to say the persons that have become my community, my little village, they've really helped to make ministry a bit better for me as a younger
This is what, yes,
wife in the
shepherdess.
ministry. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. No, we've been talking a lot, and I'm excited to have you on and to drop your nuggets. I'm happy to share you with my audience. But I wanted you to tell me a little bit about your social entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
What's that
so
about? Where did that come from?
oh my, so that has been something that I've been sitting on for a number of years. So actually it goes back to just even some of my experiences while at grad school. So while there, I could not afford textbooks. So if I couldn't afford tuition, textbooks clearly would have been
Mhm.
something that I couldn't afford. And it was my first exposure to being able to rent my textbooks, which was not something that I had experienced in Jamaica before, and renting it and returning it. But not just renting it and returning it, but renting it outside of my school. So these were other organizations that existed. I could go online, rent it, and return it. And that was something that stuck with me. And so coming back, doing my career, while working at Digital Group, though telecoms, there was a heavy aspect of it that dealt with tech, and so that was the part of the business that I worked closely with. Um, and so I had that interest and I just noted it. I noted it in 2017. I did a full business plan in 2017 and I kind of just locked it at the back of my head. So I was like, all right, I have this, I get it off my system and I can function. And fast forward to 2020, I had just ended a contract for a good government project. So I was not full time. And the pandemic hit. And I was just like, I have a little savings, and this is something I've wanted to do. Why not start it? And I started it. Started the business. So Peru's at the time started for just two purposes, really, to rent, buy or sell new or used textbooks, as well as provide tutoring services to students, high school students, as well as tertiary students, but all in the STEM subject areas, because typically those are the ones that textbooks can be more
Mhm.
expensive, can be more difficult to even navigate those subject areas. And so we did that, started off with that. However, after a number of months, I was like, no, I can't afford this. This is not gonna pay me. This was really, really hard to navigate. So I ended up taking back on a 9 to 5, but still juggling that business. And I did so for pretty much 3 years, just juggling it as well as a 9 to 5. But it really was something that was on my heart. Like, I want to do this full time. I want to do this full time. And I also want to pivot a bit more to providing digital skills and really improving information and digital literacy to students. And so I was like, I feel called to do this. And I felt so convicted of it. And so as of this year, I left my good 9 to 5. I at the time, for up until the start of this year, I would have been working with UN Women. So I was working the UN, which was also something that I had as a goal of mine years ago. When people say write the vision and make it clear, as the word of God says, trust me, it is
Habakkuk.
so real. Because, yes, because I wrote it down in 2012 and forgot. Like, I didn't even remember. It's when I got the job and I was reviewing something, I was like, wait a minute. Didn't I write this down like years ago? And now I'm actually working for the UN. Yes, maybe not at HQ headquarters, but
But
still here in the
UN.
region. Yes, and so, I mean, I learned a lot while working there. And so I made the decision. And as of this year, I am a full-time entrepreneur, um, running this organization. We do not rent or sell textbooks anymore, just because that is a very heavy investment and books don't always come back as you'd like them. I'm not telling you that we will never do it, but for now, it is
On the back
paused.
burner.
Yes, on the back burner. But we do have tutors for the STEM subject areas, particularly for CSEC and CAPE, as well as a whole other aspect of the business now is really working on upskilling students with digital skill sets. And that's what we're doing so far, and definitely loving and appreciating it. And hopefully in 2025, we're hoping to do and go on a broader scale across the island, really ensuring that we have more students upskilled, knowing how to create a website, knowing how to code, knowing how to do the work required to do a robot, like doing all of those skill sets, or
AI.
even just AI, exactly, or even just knowing how to maneuver the various digital tools that do exist that just aren't being manipulated here in Jamaica. And of course, if we say that we want to be a developed country by a certain time, then we need to ensure that our kids are well equipped. So the aim is to see how I can get more kids, especially students from certain kinds of backgrounds. So not not of our uptown,
No,
a
no,
bit
no,
more
no.
of our low income and our
Come,
middle class
yes.
income. Yeah, the more marginalized communities and backgrounds, having them really developing these skills to give themselves the opportunity to be those that offer a bit more economic empowerment in their own experience for their families and for themselves. So that's the general goal. So that's what we're
No,
doing right now.
I think I saw one of your workshops, and you did, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have done some work with disability. Tell me a little bit more about that, and why did you choose to include persons with disability?
Yes, so we and this was not even intentional. Let me just throw this out there. We initially wanted to just ensure that there was space for teens who are deaf, living with disabilities, to actually attend one of our workshops. And in inviting them, the school said, "Do you have an interpreter?" And then we are like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna need interpreters." And so we ended up on inviting them. The school that we invited another school. And then we had to ensure that we hired interpreters to be a part of the workshops. And then from there, we recognized that, of all of the niches of individuals that have like taken such a keen interest, those living with disability have like just been the highest. They have just been like, we need these skills because typically we are left behind. And so it wasn't intentional, but now we have done a good more work. We've built relationships with those, particularly those in the deaf community. And we're hoping that in 2025, we'll be able to do a lot more work with them because they are truly in our Jamaican context, we give them the basics. So, they learn math, they learn English, and then learn a little trade. That's it. We don't typically see them as being full individuals. And so for us at Peru's, the idea is seeing them as completely and holistically as anybody else because they are. They're just
Definitely.
deaf. That's all it is. They just are
Yeah.
living with that disability, but it
Disability.
doesn't mean they're disabled or unable to do and experience and live life and just be like the fullest self that they can possibly be. And
Yeah.
so we have been working closely with them. I every time I speak about it, I have to make mention to one of the students. She participated in the workshops, more than one workshop, and then we were able to sponsor her to attend a robotics camp last
Yeah.
summer. And she was just like elated because she now has the skill set of being able to create, operate, like do on the back end, understand the level of coding, the level of engineering that's required. And she's only 18. So,
Wow.
like having that capacity and watching that happen and come to life is really something that has been inspiring for me as well. And I mean, for me as well, that comes from an experience for sure that started as a child. Like, we definitely did sign language at church, but even not even just that, I had a childhood friend that was deaf. We went to the same daycare, actually. So I've known her my whole life. And to watch her navigate life has been interesting because life has been hard to her. When maybe it didn't need to be as hard because of the limitations that we as more I put in quotes able-bodied
Okay.
persons we kind of limit the experiences that they could potentially have. And so I'm just hoping that through my social enterprise I'll be better suited and our organization will be able to just inspire more of them to not only get the skills but then envision life in a whole other way.
Oh,
And
God, everyone.
we do have a number of videos that I'm hoping that we can share in the new year on our social just to give inspiration as well because
Yeah.
these students, we had them pitching, pitching their business ideas, signing, of course, but pitching their whole business. One in just like 2 hours, he came up with like a full food delivery app. And I'm like, could have pitched it, shown on the back end how it will operate, a 15-year-old who's deaf. And I'm like, we limit them. We really do limit the experiences, the capacity that they have. But in all honesty, they're
It's just,
brilliant, just about anybody else, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that that aspect of our business will definitely grow in 2025 and we will be able to impact a lot more lives. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Portmore Church is the flagship for Deaf Church in the Seventh-day Adventist faith.
Yes.
Have you tapped into those young people as yet, or is that
Well,
on the
yes, yes, but not directly. So what I mean
yeah.
is I invited the schools and they came from school, but they
Good.
also attend the church. So yeah, so definitely
Yeah,
we've definitely been engaging with them and we're looking forward
lovely,
to engaging even more with them. Yeah.
lovely, lovely. My little mango tree, it has been a blessing. It has been wonderful. We have spent so much time talking about so
Yes.
many things. Your family, you're a boy mom, 10 years coming up.
Yeah.
You're being authentic. You're being convicted and standing up for God and God showing up for you, your faith being strengthened, and the building of community, your global outlook from an early age, and the fact that you've achieved quite a lot of what you have written in your vision, the importance of your journaling and recognizing that you are valuable and sharing that with others. It's been awesome. You've spoken about integrity and transparency and public speaking skills and everything that has made you who you are. As I wrap up, my program is called It Is Possible, and I want to find out from you. You've given us a touch of it, but how would you say that you know for sure that it is possible in your life?
And I can't even sum that up because so many things have so many. Oh my gosh, if I was supposed to possibly unpack all of it, there's so much that is possible. There's so much that He makes, meaning God, that He makes possible and has made possible through me. I don't even know where to start, but I can say that in every aspect of my life, and I'm not even going to touch on my childhood, but in my adult life, I have watched him work. Like, I've seen his hand. I've seen his hand on so many aspects of my life. Financially, my career, my personal life, um, you name it, emotionally, he has really made all things well in my life. And it doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean there hasn't been hardship. It doesn't mean that I haven't, because we haven't touched on certain things for me personally that I've had to navigate to this season of my life. But what I will say is he really does all things well. He has made it possible. He's made it possible for me to grow, particularly when it comes on to my career in ways that I know, like I'm ahead of a lot of persons that I grew up with. And it's not because I'm brighter, it's
Mhm.
not for want of that, but it was because he honestly has given favor and has really had his hand on the various elements of my life. And so for me, especially with my business, I'm trying to ensure that teens know that it's possible because he's done it with me. Like he's done it for me. And as such, I'm ensuring that it's possible for you. Because I
Yeah.
see it, like I see it and I know that what I do see as your future is even just a like a smidgen of
Jesus.
your future, right? Um, but he has such a divine plan, and so that's something that I have been holding close to myself and just as living it through my own self and then just imparting it to others that it is possible because he has a divine purpose, he has a divine plan for you, and what he has done for me he can do for others, and that's just it. At the end of the day, that's what I've been carrying with me for sure this year, and I'm hoping to carry it over into next year. That's well into 2025.
Yes, yes. Legacy,
Yes.
foundation. Wow, wow, wow. Malika mango tree bearing not just blossoms, but fruits.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
they're
yes,
now an
yes,
orchard.
yes, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure. I have sat here and I have had a lovely conversation with my friend. My friend. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you very much for coming. It has been a pleasure. It is Possible Tuesday with Sanya. My community, please remember, be a dreamer, a doer, a thinker. See possibility everywhere.
When I
Because you are
call
alive,
on
everything is possible.
Jesus,
But
all
Jesus
things
beheld
are
them and said unto them, with
possible.
men
I
it is
can mount on
impossible,
wings
but with
like
God all
eagles and
things are possible.
soar.
Thank you
When
and
I
see you
call on
next time in
Jesus,
2025.
mountains are
Ladies and
gonna
gentlemen, have a good evening.
fall. 'Cause he
Thanks for
moved
having me.
heaven
You
and
are very
earth
welcome.
to
Oh, it's been
come
lovely. It's
rescue me
been
when I
lovely.
call.
having you. And I am